Okay, so we have heard this suggestion many times. Okay, the suggestion that there is a huge underestimating of Trump's popularity. Okay, now the polls aren't always going to be accurate on this, and we'll get into this in a second. But again, we have one day left until the big day. And the question: are the polls driving you guys nuts? Because it's definitely been driving me absolutely crazy. And there are reasons why they are the way that they are. And we can talk about a little bit of that just really quick. Okay. Now we can talk about, for example, the donor bias. I don't know if you ever heard about that, but there's, you know, these pollsters, they are pressured by these mega donors to lean in a certain direction. And I won't confirm that. I mean, I don't have confirmation that that's exactly happening, but there's a lot of circumstantial evidence out there that anybody with a brain can conclude that this has to be the reason why the polls are so schizophrenic in the last 3 months leading up to an election. I mean, we have these like sometimes 15, 20 point swings, right? Now, for example, what a donor will do is they will grant pollsters this large sum of money to help suggest polls will help to reflect a particular candidate in a certain light. Now, polls and it's publicly displayed for people to see. What happens that it affects people. It affects the masses, and the masses, uh, their ability to essentially vote after seeing that there's like already a 20 point lead by a particular candidate. It could discourage a voter, or it can encourage voters. So either way, that's manipulation and a form of propagandizing through methods of polling, things that would sway people to vote in a certain manner. Okay. Now, with that said, right now, the most important indicator of the presidency's final tally are the ballots themselves. Um, so it's really not about the numbers in the polling at this stage. None of that should matter to you, and it doesn't really matter to me on the eve of the election. But it's worth mentioning. Recently, the New York Times mentioned something quite interesting about polling, which might indicate some good news about the actual votes. There are all sorts of polls floating around, like the one showing Harris up by 3 points in Iowa, which realistically isn't going to happen. Okay? It's not going to happen. And if you believe that and you're a Harris supporter, by all means, feed into it. Okay? But we all know that Iowa has leaned right in 2016 and in 2020. But don't get complacent about the Iowa polling. If you are a Trump supporter, go out there and vote. Do not let these polls sway you from your most important role as a citizen in America, which is your right to vote. And that should count for something, especially on the eve of the election, okay? Now, let's quickly take a look at where those polls could have come from. Ann Seltzer is the poller that came out with that +3 Iowa lead. So when she was asked about her polling trajectory relative to the recent polling, showing quite the opposite direction of the trends that Iowa normally experiences, this was an opportunity for Ann Seltzer to defend her polling accuracy, her polling technique, or her polling methodology. And you'll see here that she looked like a fish out of water, completely fumbling. Like, how is she asking what you'll see. How is she asking these questions?
Well, I'm trying. This is in a format that's a little difficult for me to see. What does this D represent and the R represent?
So they're saying that, and again, he says read through the Seltzer crosstabs.
Yeah.
So
I-
right,
The,
they're saying that they know that this poll shows, and again, it's they say your sample is got it's more 3% more Democrats than Republican, whereas the electorate last time was eight
oh,
percent
I
more
see.
Republican. It says that you have Indies voting Democrat +4, whereas last time they
Yeah.
voted for +7, +4. So
Yeah.
they're saying if you compare what you have with what happened in 20, according to the exit polls, it's way too big a change across all these groups in a uniform way towards pro Harris as opposed to Trump.
Yeah. Well, have this is the first time I'm seeing this, and so it's sort of against my nature to think I understand everything that this is saying, and I haven't cross-checked these numbers to know how that actually pans
Yeah.
out. But I'm going to say that it is clear that senior women are an advantage to Kamala Harris in our poll. Kamala Harris wins by more than 2 to 1, actually, maybe even more than that among senior women. It's a big, big spread. So I don't know. I do. I mean, the truth.
Now, by the way, folks, please hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss a thing. Subscribing also helps me bring this all into light, all our news related items politically into light. And even beyond Tuesday, what I'll do is I'll end up following the presidency, no matter how it turns out, how that affects Americans moving forward into the future, what that means for us after Tuesday's result. I mean, it does take a couple of days to count all the votes, which is already fishy business to begin with, but that's my job moving forward. We will follow what happens with America based on these election results, okay? On the conservative side, people have their theories, okay? Now, some think that these polls that lean left is more suppression type polls, and it's meant to deter the Trump turnout. Okay. Others say it's just, again, sloppy methodology, maybe kind of like what Ann Seltzer was uh, doing out there in Iowa, but it's not worth focusing on now. Okay. Now, if you look at the New York Times polls, it shows interesting points about the votes. The latest New York Times Siena polls projects Trump winning the Electoral College, 280. It's that's their trajectory. Taking Arizona by 5, Michigan by 2, Pennsylvania and Georgia by 1, and but losing to Nevada. Also losing to Wisconsin and North Carolina. Now these outcomes seem really scattered. Okay, there's really no way Trump is winning Arizona by 5 while losing Nevada by 3. Okay, Nevada and Arizona are too much alike. And I say so as a Californian, okay, because like geographically they are politically similar. So for there to be such a swing like that between Arizona and Nevada, that just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so you have to keep those things in mind. But again, Trump doesn't need Nevada to win. Trump needs, well, it'd be the best case scenario if Trump wins Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia. That's one of our biggest pathways to getting Trump beyond the 270. Now, again, that poll with Harris winning in Iowa by 3, which is wholly unrealistic. Setting aside these contradictory results, the important thing to focus on and the larger question here is, are polls, which appear better for Trump this cycle, still an underestimating of the true Trump voting results, as we saw in 2020, as we saw in 2016, which polls have consistently underestimated and underperformed the tallying of what Trump results really are. Now, others argue that these polls may be a little bit more accurate nowadays, or even overestimating Trump to correct the past errors seen like back in 2020 and 2016. Who knows? But on election day, Republican turnout has always been much greater than Democratic turnouts. Okay, that's just been the history. That's always been the case. That's just how the world works. Okay, the New York Times pollster Nate Cohen mentioned that white Republicans. Okay, I'll pull this up here. White Republicans are less likely to respond to their surveys compared to Democrats, hinting that the non-response bias could still be at play. So even with some of these overestimating that these pollsters have calculated and baked into the cake, it's found still that white Republicans are less likely to respond to these surveys, which could severely, again, affect the outcomes of these polls. Now, you have to understand, Trump's many supporters were reluctant to take these surveys, as they are reluctant to even talk dominantly in public about their support for Trump. I mean, me in many cases, right? I have to kind of suppress my political stance with people because they are what they are. They're freaking snowflakes. And I live in California, so go figure, okay? Now, this phenomenon is the the silent Trump voter phenomenon, which arises partly from Trump's voters' distrust of the surveyors, or their reluctancy to proclaim their support for Donald Trump. It's just a thing. People are labeled so many things, even myself. They would label me a Nazi if I am out there supporting Trump in the darkest of blue California. Okay, it is just what it is. Now, there's a debate about whether these voters still exist, and I believe some are still hesitant, though fewer may be in hiding. Like myself, I have been a little bit more brave lately to talk about my fervent support for Trump. Now, Trump supporters I've noticed myself, seem less afraid of the backlash in 2024. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's like a boiling pot. People are just freaking tired of hiding behind their support for Trump, their nationalism, and how even the word nationalism is being sensationalized as like Nazi propaganda. It's not. If you're a nationalist and you care about American values and you care about safety at our southern borders, that's freaking cool. Because without borders, you are not a nation. What's a nation without borders? You name another country outside of America who doesn't give a damn about their borders. No, they all do. Apparently, except the United States. So, Cohen's comments about Wisconsin reveals that white Republicans there, particularly in rural areas, are still less responsive to these pollsters, which I think goes to say that there is still a large majority of silent Trump voters out there. I mean, there's some people that actually go out there and say that they support Kamala Harris when, truly they are Trump supporters because of the backlash that they are getting from just this insane, woke society that we have just been thrusted into since 2020. Okay, now, Cohen also shared data that white Democrats were 16% more likely than white Republicans to respond to these surveys, similar again to 2020. Now, this disparity could mean that polls are again underestimating the Trump turnout. Again, due to this silent Trump voter demographic. So, and it's really quite particular to these blue walled states like Wisconsin, which is a favorable Rust Belt state for Trump, actually. But nevertheless, the backlash people get, they are a lot more reluctant to show their support for Donald Trump. Now, if polls are underestimating Donald Trump even slightly, it could lead to this electoral college win for all 7 battleground states, which is, I have a fishy suspicion we are headed in the direction of. Now, he's only down by 2 points in states like Virginia, so some unexpected wins might really be possible. But that's assuming the polls are off the way that they were before back in 2020 and 2016. Now, as we approach election day, we are on the eve of the election. None of this matters. Okay, what really truly matters now, today, on November 4th, is patriots like you going out there to vote. So as soon as you're done with this video, if you aren't already out there had voted, please get out there and vote. And have a plan for the upcoming days to see follow-up videos, because I will be discussing the turnout, the results at length as the days go into the weekend, and hopefully we can tally up all the votes for those really slow counting states like Nevada and Arizona. So let's stay strong, and please hit that subscribe button and hit the like button and share and like, so you can support small channels like me, patriots like me, help expose the world to the lunacy that we have to endure. And if you can help, please support this conservative movement that I think America is on trajectory for, because quite frankly, I think we are all tired of this DEI woke world. I'll see you guys soon.